Welcome back, everybody. This week in America, from the author of the popular Fluke Family Fantasy series comes another whimsical tale that is sure to captivate young and adult readers. Author Robert A.G. Erickson opens a parallel world to invite readers to witness the fate of the Medieval Kingdom of Duscany in his new book, The Wizor Fair. You'll meet the twins Lenny and Cassy as they enter Duscany and must overcome a power struggle between two powerful sorcerers and a wicked fairy before they can return home. Robert Erickson grew up in western Montana, a third-generation descendant of Swedish immigrants, a Navy veteran of the Vietnam conflict, a retired U.S. Coast Guard enlisted man, author of the Fluke Family books, and now author of The Wizor Fair. Robert A.G. Erickson joining us on This Week in America. Robert, welcome to the program. Great to have you with us today.
Well, I'm glad to be here.
This is really an interesting book, whimsical, I call it, and that's exactly what it is. And I mentioned this is a book that will be a pleasure for young and adult readers alike, isn't it? And I'm sure you're getting a response from both categories. This really, you can be an adult, sit and really enjoy it as well.
Oh, yes. I basically wrote it that way so that everyone could join in the fun.
And the name of the book is The Wizor Fair. Robert R.G. Erickson, our guest on the program. And I understand a lot of the credit for this goes to your wife, which she sort of had the idea, inspired you for the book, and helped you with some of the characters.
Well, actually, I can say that. She's been an inspiration, and she's did a lot of proofreading. She just loves the book. We had a lot of fun writing it.
I can imagine that as you read the book, The Wizor Fair, you think, okay, this is as much fun probably for the author as it is for those of us who are reading the book. I mentioned the twins in the beginning. Let's sort of set the stage for this, and I mentioned the parallel world they're living in. Talk about the twins and how they suddenly are drawn into this other world.
Well, yes, they are modern-day children, 14 years old, and they live in Seattle. I picked that because I used to live there, very, very close to the same area. So you know how things go.
Yes.
But anyway, they meet up with Skeldon, who is a apprentice sorcerer, also known as a wizard, and everything he does magically is called a wizard, naturally. But he accidentally changes Cassy into a whelf, which is like a pixie, and then the impossible begins from there.
Yeah, they're transported to Duscany, as I mentioned. Describe that for us.
Well, the transportation, they were just going to go visit, but it all becomes accidental from there on because our modern world wasn't magical enough for Skeldon or any of the stuff that he does to last, including Cassy's whelf aspect. So all that was fading away, and he had to just return. But accidentally, he takes everybody else with him.
The book is called The Wizor Fair. Robert R.G. Erickson, our guest on the program. Book's available at all the places you can find books, including Amazon. You can go to bookventure.com/bookstore to get information. And Robert's website is robertagerickson.com. And, of course, you can go to thisweekinamerica.us and link on directly. The title, of course, is The Wizor Fair. Explain The Wizor Fair and how that plays into Lenny and Cassy.
Well, to begin with, Skeldon he arrives in Seattle looking for more wizards in order to use them at a Wizor Fair in his own land. All that implies is that he needs them to win the fair in order to become an official sorcerer and to become an apprentice to the most powerful wizard in Duscany.
And there's a power struggle that takes place, too. Talk about that. It seems like a very easy concept in the beginning, and all of a sudden you've got all these conflicts, this tension going on. You've got actually what the future of the Lenny and Cassy at stake here.
Well, yes, exactly right. Because they arrive in Duscany and they can't return, so they have to survive long enough to find out how to get back home. However, with Cassy, well, she's locked into what's called the whelf conflict to become the queen of the whelfs, but she's drawn into it. She has to be there because she's now a whelf, and power struggle is caused by the chief sorcerer of the land, whose name is Scapita, but he's actually tapping the power of the whelves, and Skeldon and Lenny. Well, they have to find a way not only to save or rescue Cassy. He must overcome Skeldon's the sorcerer's Scapita's conquest of the whelves, and also another sorcerer named Grodin, who was also sponsoring Skeldon, but he's unwilling to help any way, shape, or form. In fact, he wants the power also, and he'll do anything to get it.
It's a real adventure. It's exciting as you read through the book, The Wizor Fair. Where did this idea come from? It's always interesting to find out how something like this, as elaborative as a plot as you develop it, did it all beginning? Did you do an outline, or did you sort of go where the story was taking you?
Well, it's pretty much where the story took me. I actually wrote it in '93 and finished it last year. But yeah, it all come just gradually. As a fill-in-the-blank sort of thing.
The book is called The Wizor Fair. Robert A.G. Erickson, our guest on the program. Obviously, and I mentioned before, and we'll talk about the other book that you have written, and we'll talk about that in a second, the Fluke Family books. Where did the inspiration come from? Has this been fiction, fantasy, something as a child that you were interested in?
Oh, yeah. I've always written things, even when I was very small. As soon as I was able to write, well, that's what I was doing.
And obviously continued that into adulthood. And what was it like when you decided, well, in fact, let's talk about that process. When you decided, I've always enjoyed this, I'm going to do a book and I'm going to get the book published. What was that process like? And what was it like when you finally finished a book, you had it printed, and you're standing there holding a copy of the book? What was that whole experience like for you? Yeah, I can tell that was enjoyable when you got to that process. Probably a few pains along the way, but enjoyable when you got there.
Well, it's enjoyable when it's done.
Yes.
It's not so enjoyable during the process because the editing alone takes a year and 50 times through the book or more, and it just really wrecks your brain.
Well, I was just going to say, how difficult is that? What kind of a challenge does that possess? Because as you go back through it, this is not a simple plot where you follow one story all the way through. You've got all these different subplots and everything working out. And I'm sure when you go back and read through that, this all has to connect. There has to be a connecting point somewhere. How challenging is that to make all of these different subplots you've got going tie into the main theme and make some sense?
Well, I would say that is extremely challenging. I have to make notes all along the way and make sure that all of my plot lines line up. And if they don't, well, then I go back and fix them as part of that 50 times through. There was some issues in this book for timing of when people did what. And sometimes it was off, and I had to adjust. Some of it I just didn't find until much too late, or almost too late, I should say.
Yeah, you'd almost have to go through it paragraph by paragraph on some of this to make sure everything fits in together. And in reading the book, it flowed for me, and I was amazed that you were able to tie everything together. The book we're talking about is called The Wizor Fair by Robert A.G. Erickson. Mentioned in this parallel world at Seattle, because that's where you grew up, so you had some familiarity there. In talking about the twins Lenny and Cassy, was that based on anybody you knew or just sort of recollections from childhood?
Pretty much recollections. Yeah, I didn't know any twins. Actually, I did, but not well. And they they had nothing to do with anything that I dreamed up. But the kids are totally fictitious. However, I use aspects of myself and my wife to help identify them.
When you were writing the book, talk a little bit about the process. Do you have like a specific period of time you set aside to sit and write, or how do you go about the discipline of writing?
Well, you really have to just sit down and do it. If you put it off, then it's done. I mean, you're over with.
Right.
You have to put in, decide on whatever hours a day that it is, whether it's a few minutes or an hour, you got to do it. And if you don't do it, it won't get done. It never will start to begin with.
Yeah, it would seem like that discipline would be very important. How is it, because the story is somewhat intricate, is it difficult to walk away from it, or in the middle of the night are you thinking, I had Lenny do this and Cassy really needs to do this, or Skeldon needs to do this? How difficult was it to walk away and clear your mind for a period of time?
That was extremely difficult, because I would wake up at night and make notes about something that I forgot to do.
Exactly. So it's something that you just really couldn't turn it off. And I guess that's the case with most writers. It's not something you can just turn off and turn back on again. What are you working on now?
Well, I could work on a sequel to the Wizor Fair, because I have written out an outline. But I have other aspects that I want to complete, like a fourth book to the Fluke Family series. And I have some science fiction books I want to complete. I mean, they are in progress.
Right. Talk about I mentioned the Fluke Family books that you've written and working on another one in that series. Talk about the Fluke Family books. Basically, what are we talking about, or what's sort of the concept of those books?
Well, they are based also in a medieval world, and most people don't understand magic at all, and well, it's pretty much absent. However, there is such a thing, and the hero, Maynard Fluke Dumstead, as his name implies, he's not all there, at least not in the beginning, and he's unschooled country bumpkin sort of fellow, and it's a wonder or it's a fluke that he actually survives. But it is meant to be a comedy of errors, you might say. And he meets up with a ghost gnome and who just wants to take advantage of him for drinks, and made with promises that he doesn't keep.
You can get information on the series, the Fluke Family books, at Robert's website. That's robertagerickson.com. Talking about the new book, The Wizor Fair, and information available by linking onto our website, thisweekinamerica.us. You can go directly to Robert's website and get the information. A few minutes left in the program. It's interesting, as you're reading this, the influences on you as a child, as an early author, when you decided I would like to write books. What were some of the books that you read growing up? Obviously an interest in fictions such as this in medieval times.
Well, that part of it was pretty much lately. I became attached to fantasy as it grew more popular. But growing up, I enjoyed science fiction of Robert Heinlein and Arthur C. Clarke and stuff like that. And, of course, other adventurous books like The Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew Mysteries.
Yes. And you've carried that all into the Wizor Fair. Robert A.G. Erickson, our guest on the program. A couple minutes left in the show. Mentioned some of the books you're working on now and the response you get. What kind of response you're getting? And that has to be very gratifying when you have someone young or old who reads the book and really touched by what you're doing in the book. That has to be all of the years and the effort and the sleepless nights have to be worth it when you get someone who enjoys the book.
Well, that's absolutely true. I haven't had much feedback with the current book, The Wizor Fair, because it's just recently out. But people who have read it, or mostly who are my family, they've loved it. And that sort of thing also applied with the Fluke Family books, because I sent all 3 copies to a nephew, and he loved them so much that he just couldn't put them down, and he just kept asking me if I'm going to write another book. And actually, I sent the book to his father, my brother, but he took them from him and wouldn't give them back.
You know, it's interesting that we talk about the impact it has on the readers. How about the impact it has on you? I mentioned retired. Obviously, this is a very important part of your life now in writing and in thinking through plot lines for not only the Wizor Fair, but the new books you're working on. What has this sort of like second career meant to you?
Well, it's just a fun time.
Yes.
I can't get too serious about it because, well, you can be very disappointed. But I do enjoy writing, and I do enjoy writing books in particular. I started out writing short stories, but I started looking at the short stories and said, wow, this would make a terrific book. That's how the Fluke Family was born. And pretty much the same way with the Wizor Fair. It started out as a short story.
The Wizor Fair is the name of the book, the new book by Robert A.G. Erickson. The book's available at Amazon. You can go to bookventure.com/bookstore and get information on the book, or go to Robert's website, robertagerickson.com, and get information on all of the books that Robert has written. And you can stay up to date with Robert as well on future works, or you can log on to thisweekinamerica.us and link on directly to Robert's website. The Wizor Fair is the name of the book. Robert, a pleasure having you on the program. Continued success. It's an excellent job with the Wizor Fair, and thank you for being with us on the program.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. The Wizor Fair, Robert A.G. Erickson, our guest on the program. Information, of course, available at our website, thisweekinamerica.us. And the program continues right after these messages.